Welcome to PSYWAR Profiles, where we take an in-depth look at interesting individuals or groups that make up the Psyop regiment. Today we have a currently serving Psyop NCO that came from the Transportation Corps. Welcome, CJ. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm CJ. I've been in PSYOP since 2013. I've been in the Army since 2008. I'm currently within the 8th PSYOP group.
Okay. Can you give us a little more on your background, kind of where you came from, maybe why you joined the Army, what spawned that desire?
Yeah, so I'm one of what I used to think was the rare active duty soldiers from Michigan. I enlisted in the Transportation Corps, the logistics, as an 88 Mike. My first duty station was in Korea and Camp Humphreys, back before everybody moved down there, from what I hear. And then after that, I was stationed at Fort Bragg with the 307th Engineers before the Deuce, absorbed them. And then I transitioned into PSYOP.
Okay, so definitely appreciate you coming out today. Appreciate where you've been. You said the Deuce. You were talking about the
82nd.
Deuce, 82nd.
Yeah.
So not your first duty station. Did you ask to go there, or was that just the normal transition for everybody leaving Korea at the time?
So rumor has it that there's a Korean rotation, that once you get stationed at Korea, you go somewhere else, and then you end up back into Korea, which I didn't mind. I always liked the Korean culture. I liked being exposed to it. I liked to travel. I met a lot of, I served a lot of battle buddies there that were more interested in being stationed somewhere close to home, and it always confused me because there's just a whole nother culture, right? There's more to life than our neighborhood block, and it was right there in Korea, and South Korea, with a nation that's very friendly with us, and very nice people, very welcoming people, even somebody that definitely stood out like me, right? So the food was good. The culture, the nightlife was good. I made many good friends that served and that were just regular, citizens in South Korea.
Right. So you had an opportunity to experience foreign culture through and through before you were ever in PSYOP.
Yeah, and I liked it. Actually, that's where I first got exposed to PSYOP. I think I was a specialist, right? So I had a medical appointment at a different post in Yongsan, Camp Yongsan in Korea. So I had to take the bus down there and went to my medical appointment, and I kind of pulled the specialty, shamming a little bit. So I snuck over to the Burger King, and lo and behold, there was a couple of trifolds there. One was for civil affairs, and one was for PSYOP. So I looked at them all, and after reading the trifolds based on the description in there, I eyed PSYOP and was like, hey, that's what I want to do. So I pocketed that trifold and continued my day of adventure in Yongsan, and then hopped on the last bus and went back to Humphreys.
So you were in transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something you wanted to do? Was it something you kind of, tell us about how you ended up in that field?
Coming out of, at the time I enlisted and coming out of Michigan, I think I went into the recruiting office in July for the 4th of July holiday. And it was a combined recruiting station. So it had Marines, Navy, and Army. Unfortunately, no Air Force there. I don't know. Kind of weird with the University of Michigan being there and one of the leading medical schools. You would think the Air Force would be there getting some of that homegrown Michigan intelligence, right? But I go, and Navy wasn't there. 4th of July holiday, Navy wasn't there. So the Marines were there. Oddly enough, I was 30 years old at the time, going to the recruiter. Yeah. 2008.
So, and I don't want to interrupt too much on that, but that's a lot of life experience,
Mm-hmm.
and now you're saying, I want to go join the military.
Yeah.
So did something happen that caused that kind of...
Well, I've been a restaurateur since I was 16, right? So I spent, at that time, 14 years working for various restaurants. Finally, I started at a well-known company of restaurants as a dishwasher and worked my way up to salary manager, right? And from there, I just kind of felt like there wasn't much more I could do. I kind of lost faith in where the restaurant was going, that particular restaurant and the company of restaurants. I lost faith in where they were going. So I was looking for something else. When I was 18, you know, I went and talked to the Marines, you know, trying to be special recon or something like that.
Right.
And like the Marine recruiter was really the stereotypical, I'm going to say one thing but do another. Like I made a deal with the recruiter that I would go with him to the MEP station when he gave me enough notice to give my job a 2 weeks notice, so that when everything, if everything didn't pan out, I still had a good relationship with my job, so I could go back.
Right.
That recruiter had agreed, but then didn't uphold the bargain. Right. I got home from work one night, closing, and the recruiter was sitting there in the driveway, car running, like, go now if you want to go. Right. And that was like 1996, so I don't know what was pressing back then. Not much. Bosnia, maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But so then I just turned it down, walked away, and throughout the years, I already sat there going, "What if? You know, what if I would have joined? I wonder what." So I was just kind of unsatisfied with any choices. You know, I didn't have a college degree. Basically on a high school diploma. Like I said, from the bottom to the top in the restaurant, I felt like I had what it took to be successful. So I wanted to try it in the Army and have no regrets. So at 30, I went and enlisted. I sought to enlist. So as I was saying, I go to the combined recruiting station. Air Force didn't exist in that combined office. Navy wasn't there. They were off for the holiday. So cool. I go back to the Marine. And I was like, I'm going to fulfill what I tried to do when I was 18, you know, all the while hearing, you know, some advice my grandmother told me, mentioning that I'm no longer a spring chicken. But I'm not, yeah, right.
30, you're not a spring chicken anymore.
Yeah, right.
That's worrisome.
You know, I lost that indestructible feeling, but I still felt like I could succeed there. So I go to the Marines, talk to them. The Marine recruiter asked me what I had to offer his Marine Corps. And I just kind of looked. I said, you know, I'm determined. I think I'm successful. And where I don't succeed, I will strive to achieve that success, you know, mental aptitude, mental toughness. Then he started rattling a bunch of specs, like, you know, their 3-mile requirement, their PT requirements. And mind you, I hadn't done exercise since high school, and I was at, 30 years old. So a lot of that looked like something I couldn't achieve. I kind of defeated myself mentally.
Okay.
So I just turned around and walked away, kind of a little, I don't know what's the word. I had a little bit of down because I, thought I wasn't going to succeed in joining the Army, and maybe I'd waited too long, or joining the military, and maybe I'd waited too long. Then an aroma of like grilled burgers or something came through the hallway. So I followed the smell of charcoal grill to the back door, and lo and behold, the Army recruiters are back there grilling, celebrating, the 4th of July, celebrating independence of our nation. And, they look up, and they're like, can I help you? And I was like, yes, you can. This is where I want to be.
Because I want a cheeseburger.
Yeah. So, they offered me some food, and I came back a couple of days later and talked to them about joining the Army. And at that time, 88 Mike was hiring. They were recruiting heavily for 88 Mikes back in 2008. I didn't think I was ready to be an infantryman. I didn't think I had it in me. I was more interested in the supply chain based on my restaurant experience.
Okay.
Definitely turned down being a 92 Golf. Was not trying to be a cook for the military.
Okay.
I just wanted to walk away from that.
So you've said 88 Mike a few times. For people that don't know, so that's MOS code for one of the jobs in transportation.
Yes.
Now there's a variety of transportation jobs. Which one is that?
So 88 Mike is the wheeled vehicle operator. At least it was at the time. I've been out of touch with that MOS code for a while. They have 88 Novembers, which are other logisticians that kind of coordinate travel. I believe like 88 hotels that do like container management for shipping, other forms of logistics. They have, I understand they have like motorboat operators in the Army. There's a lot of things that sometimes you don't get exposed to.
Sure. And so say that title for us one more time.
What's
for 88
one?
Mike?
Wheeled vehicle operator.
So Uber driver,
Truck driver.
really big Uber driver.
Really big Uber driver. Really, yeah, yeah. Part of the description was, if I were to be assigned to an infantry unit, I would drive the LMTV, filled with soldiers in the back, taking them to the range so they can shoot. And I found myself doing that a lot when I was with the engineers.
Okay. All right. So you got the job. You said they were hiring.
Yeah.
Didn't want to be a cook.
Didn't want to be a cook. 88 Mike's. Additionally, they paid the best bonus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here you are in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
You've kind of dispelled that self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the military. You've moved on to that greater purpose.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you saw the flyer you talked about for Psyop.
Mm-hmm.
What was that mechanism? Aside from seeing that trifold on your day of shamming,
Mm-hmm.
What was the epiphany or that moment that said, yeah, that's what I really want to do, and I'm going to go talk to the recruiter and I'm going to start this process? Tell us about that.
So here I was, probably 33 years old at this time. Junior enlisted, receiving, life lessons from 23-year-olds about, what it's like on the big outside, which is understandable. It's, it's part of what NCOs are supposed to do,
Sure.
to help mentor and stuff like that.
Right.
But I felt like I was getting the cookie cutter treatment. There was no recognizing the individual, which is kind of like the big Army way, right? I understand that's how you're going to do it. It kind of helps you through massive force-on-force battles. That kind of big generalization, it gets you through the tough times, right? And it helps you be able to make sure everything's checked as far as boxes when you're checking up on your soldiers and checking up on your units and achieving objectives, right?
Right.
But I felt like there was more, I still felt slightly unsatisfied. I was pleased with being in the military, specifically the Army, specifically overseas. And I got a lot of support from my leadership, actually, and encouraging me to seek something else within the military. Even though I was a motor vehicle operator in Korea, I spent most of my time as an aircraft fueler, right? So I'd been exposed to different aircraft operations. I saw people do static line jumps out of Chinooks over Camp Humphreys for large exercises, and
Talking about parachuting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I didn't get to interact with the unit at all, but I'd seen some Red Beret soldiers walking through Camp Humphreys with nice little patches on their shoulder that I hadn't seen before, and I saw one at the PX and talked to them. And lo and behold, they were 37 Fox, a PSYOP sergeant. And he told me about it, and that was like another sign for me, right? So various soldiers of the month and soldiers of the quarter board during the interview process. When the sergeant's major asked me what I wanted to do, I just started saying, I think I want to be a PSYOP soldier. And afterwards, they would tell me that maybe special operations may be a good fit for you because you're a problem solver, you're a self-motivator. We'd barely have to give you any supervision. And, they say maybe it's because I'm more mature, or maybe it's just because of my work ethic. And I started taking that to heart.
No, it makes sense. It's always good when you have senior leaders that recognize the potential in a soldier. I'm curious, the dynamic, you mentioned it, being a 33-year-old who's working for essentially a 23-year-old, there's a 10-year age gap, and they're trying to give you life lessons. Mm. You have any interesting stories, maybe, that you can recall on how that engagement was? Because I came in not as late. I came in at 20, so it was 2 years. But even still, having peers that are in charge of you is not quite the same as having somebody who's several, almost a decade, an age difference. You're my boss, and you're trying to tell me how to live life. Where
right.
I've essentially had a career that I just came from, and
in general, it's more like people are trying to trying to coach and advise what the workforce would be like outside of the Army, and what it would be like to receive instruction from like a manager, salaried or hourly, versus their style of NCO leadership. One time I was with a unit where it seemed to be the pattern was the leadership would have, like, the first sergeant would grab all the platoon sergeants and the squad leaders, and they would have like a closeout meeting. And after the closeout meeting, we would be told to put the vehicles online and then show up tomorrow for PT. But we had to wait for that meeting in this age of cell phones. So, and that would cut into our time to be able to get into the DFAC and get a decent spot in line, right, and some decent freshness of food. So I kind of rallied the rest of the squads to get ahead of it, while they were in the meeting. We're putting the vehicles online, even though we hadn't moved them before. Okay, we'll start up the the 5 tons or whatever, pull them forward, back them up, make sure they're online, so that when these junior sergeants, junior NCOs would come out and say, okay, put your vehicles online. When we started reporting that we had done them during the meeting because we've understood the pattern, they weren't too happy about us doing things that they didn't tell us to do, even though we understood the pattern. And that's one of the things I actually appreciate about being a PSYOPer. It's like when you understand the pattern, something needs to be done, it's right to do it. You don't get chastised for doing it. You kind of get recognized, rewarded. Maybe not, pomp and circumstance and an award ceremony, but leadership and your peers understand that you're going to be responsible.
No, that's a good point. And I do agree. I came from the infantry. There's always a time and a place for that rigid structure. Mm-hmm. I've always said that's not always all the time,
right,
or in every place. And I can say when I was in the infantry, I appreciated my soldiers that were willing to take some of the initiative, especially if like you said, the pattern.
Yeah.
That it decreases the frustration on the leader, really. And so I would find, I understand your frustration, because if they're coming out and they're not really happy that you took a little bit of initiative, that's unfortunate. Here, that's what we expect. Mm-hmm. And so you had all that engagement. You talked to the PSYOPer. Now you've decided your leadership's supporting you. This is where you want to go. I want to go to the special operations side of things. Talk us through that.
So I decided I wanted to go special operations. Earlier, when I was in Korea, I reached out to psychological operations about enlisting or reclassing. And this was when I was a PFC, I believe. And PSYOPs had a packet entry instead of a selections process. I wasn't quite familiar with the paper packet process, but I reached out to a recruiter just for a little more information and maybe some help in generating a packet. And the recruiter informed me that my packet would not be reviewed even until I was a specialist. So I kind of took that as a snubbing and went to SFAS. No training, went to SFAS to see what it's about. Made it second to last day with my peers and my peer candidates who had extensively trained and watched like 3 Weeks in Hell and were physical specimens, and a lot of my mental fortitude is what got me there, and my I guess lack of physical preparedness is kind of what set me a little behind. But afterwards, some of the cadre there, told me, hey, do a couple more squats so you can get your ruck up and come back, because your reliability and your mental fortitude is what we're looking for. And they asked me why I came, like, what brought you here? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, because I didn't have enough rank to be a PSYOPer at the time, and it kind of knocked them for a loop. Like, my mind was always set on this. So when I had enough rank, and after I got to Fort Bragg initially with with the engineers of the 307th, and got snubbed on going to Iraq because I wasn't an engineer, because I was a motor vehicle operator, right? I decided, well, I'm just going to go to selection now. I got enough rank. I'm already here on Fort Bragg, so I'm going to go try it out.
So this was after Psyop selection had begun?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you are going to Psyop selection now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious because it's something you mentioned early on, that what if factor, the doubt. So you've kind of overcome several hurdles at this point,
Yeah.
to include going to one selection. So you've done a lot of things. What is that like? You know, you're trying to get to this end state, this goal, but you know, you've overcome some obstacles and some of that self-doubt. Now here you are again, about to start a second selection. What was that like?
I realized that I didn't have to be like this chunk of muscular mass, right, that could just climb Mount Everest 5 times and, you know, run 1 million marathons. And granted, when I was in Korea, I did the Manchu Mile for fun. I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me right now, but I did. I was bored, so I did it. But I made an event out of it. We partied before, we partied after. Just, went for a good ruck march in between. Kind of like, I guess, the color run would be or something like that, or the mud run would be right now. But after I realized that a lot of the idea of just what a special operations soldier is a lot of it is mental and emotional, because you can get stronger. You can go to the gym, you can do laps, you can run, you can get stronger, and you can lose it when you don't do it.
Sure.
And same thing, I think, with mental and emotional toughness. You work on it, and you get better at it, you get stronger. And, just like with physical training, sometimes you need a trainer. Just like, emotional and mental, you might need some help with that. That's fine. And I got that help through the stages in the military career, right? From those talks from those E5s, just kind of like telling me what life is going to be like, to going to the one selection, just kind of showing myself that, okay, I could, do the proverbial mental bench press of a selection in those events, right? So I just felt like I was ready.
I mean, I think the good that comes out of that, from not just your story or your personal perspective, to feel good yourself.
Yeah.
But for anybody that's out there, you hear a lot of, okay, this is what a special operations soldier looks like. And I don't think that there is a cookie cutter answer for what a special operations soldier looks like. You're going to have those guys that are gym rats. They go out and they hit it hard and they hit it all the time, and that's what they do, and they're good at it.
Yeah.
But they're also good at other things that translate well into the special operations environment. And so I think, for you especially, and I know it was for me as well, I came from the infantry where it's just full of guys that are rough and tough and get after it, and they're very physically fit, and that's very important, but that's not the only thing that matters when you come into a special operations selection or even a special operations MOS. And so, for yourself, having overcome all of those hurdles and that self-doubt is very important, because it's a testament to your mental fortitude. And that's a very important attribute for soft soldiers, because you may be put into situations that require that. You may be on a solo mission somewhere, and it may not be the most physically demanding mission.
Right.
I mean, we work everywhere across the spectrum, so seeing that is, in yourself, but also seeing it from a leader standpoint in your soldiers, because you mentioned earlier that when you started talking about coming into PSYOP, you had that support.
Yeah.
And so, your leaders probably saw something in you at that point, and that's where you got that support. And so it speaks volumes about the types of individuals that we get in special operations, and the types of individuals that we do get in PSYOP.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure, you went to selection.
Yes.
And there was all kinds of physical stuff that you were like, man, this sucks.
Yes. I wasn't quite ready for it. I thought, maybe the month or 2 months prior, however long it took me to recover, if SFAS was enough preparation for the Psyop. I thought I could just go and, for lack of a better phrase, drag knuckle all the way through it. I could not. I was, I probably didn't, eat enough oatmeal and get enough sleep to prepare myself for some of the mental challenges, like logic challenges and problem-solving challenges that were more than how far can I carry something.
Right.
But it was actually a good twist, and I think even though the connection is not immediate, I can see where it's all related after my some of my experiences in Psyop.
Right. Well, I mean, it's soft. Special operations. You're thrown into ambiguous situations where you have to try and figure out a solution, and it may not be the most observant or observable, solution, and sometimes you have to create the solution out of nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what that's what the selection is about, is seeing, cool, you can run and ruck, maybe, whatever. It's not always the most important thing. We
Right.
want to see how you think and how you understand problem sets, because that's what we're trying to affect when you come into PSYOP. So you made it,
Yes.
got selected,
Yes.
went through the Q course,
Yes.
boom, here you are. You've been in the regiment how many years now?
So since 13, 7 years.
7 years?
Yeah.
So you've had a variety of experiences.
Yeah.
So obviously we talked about the pre-Army,
Mm-hmm.
talked about pre-PSYOP.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've been in PSYOP and seen what?
Seen a lot. Honestly, most of it as an E5. When I left 88 Mike Rome, the points were 790 never. I kind of did some
Sit and wait forever.
did some research. Said, oh, special operations, quick promotion rates, and then as soon as I reclassed, there was one massive promotion from U5 to E6, and then almost nothing. Right? You had to. PSYOP became 790 never, but it was fine. There was still work to do, right?
Right.
So in this time, I've done one tactical deployment to Afghanistan. I've done 2 deployments to partner nations to work with U.S. embassies, and I've done 1 temporary duty assignment to a 2-star command. So all of these were pretty interesting, and I learned so much from all of them. Speaking on problem solving, let's go in the 2-star command. I call this time here the Major's Playground. So
The Major's Playground?
The Major's Playground.
What is that?
So if you look at a typical like squad composition, right, it's E4s, maybe E3s, and then like ran by like a 05, maybe an 06. Well, in the operations section of this 2-star command, you replace that percentage of E4s with O4s, right? And they're being led by maybe 05 section chiefs, and then have the 06 in charge of like that shop,
Okay,
like a platoon, right?
Very field grade heavy.
Yeah, very field grade heavy. And so I go in this element as part of a 4-soldier team, an intel individual, myself as an E5, a captain, in charge of us, and then that captain being advised by an E8. And as we get there and divvy the work, the E8 does what senior NCOs do and took care of people, and he did a really good job, and that was his focus. The 03 had to support the officers in the 04 playground, the Major's Playground. They kind of saw him and I don't know, took him into their club. So that left me doing a lot of the background work, supporting my captain with information to help give advice to the 04s. And so in that, I learned how missions get drafted, how they're created, and how problems get solved. And one of those times I identified a problem, And so I defined what the problem is and recommended a solution. I drafted it up in the email. I handed it to the captain. A couple days later, the captain taps me, shows me the computer. We've been blind CC'd on the very email that I wrote that went to the Pentagon to advise the Secretary of Defense on a change of mission for one of our elements.
Oh, wow.
0 changes.
So you as an E5 are affecting, you said, which secretary?
The Secretary of Defense.
So you're affecting national defense strategy
Yes.
as an E5
Yeah.
because of an email.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
I don't think I could have done that when I was an 88 Mike as an E5. I don't think maybe the E6 would take something from me, but I think somewhere, or as far as advice, but I think somewhere along the line, there may have been somebody in the battalion level that might have put the kibosh on that, if you will.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, it's one of the things that I've seen within the special operations community. Senior leaders are more willing to hear what's going on at the lower levels from your enlisted junior NCOs.
Yeah.
And there's more of a connection.
Yeah.
It's very, very common for us to engage with those senior leaders. I've engaged with O6s and GOs,
Yes.
Departments of State officials, ambassadors, on several occasions. So it's a very unique, complex, but at the same time fulfilling career field and position to be in. And I don't think, same for me as a young infantryman. I never met anybody over. I think the highest rank that I ever met was a lieutenant colonel.
Right.
As a young infantryman.
Right.
That's speaks to the volumes of what we do and how we do it across the spectrum of the military.
Yeah, you have to be able to shift too, right? So like when I was an 88 Mike, around the lieutenant colonel, rigid, stiff, because that's what discipline looks like.
Right.
But when you get into the embassy environment, right, when you're dealing with an 05 or the most senior military official sometime in 06, and you have to talk to them, and maybe out in the open, and you're maybe wearing business casual or in a suit, they don't want you to be strict and rigid.
Right.
They want you to be relaxed. Because that kind of like the old joke where you walk around base deployed and the rule's out that you must salute all officers right there. Well, if somebody's spotting, you're just putting a target on your back.
Right.
And they're relying on you to kind of protect them from that out there. Like, hey, be normal, be casual, and that's their idea of discipline. So you have to be able to flip-flop, because sometimes you go to like an actual military function, military ceremony or something with the Marines that might be on guard there, and you got to be able to switch back to the military concept of discipline.
Flexible is the word that jumps out at me, but also one of our special operations imperatives, just understanding our operational environment.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And those two things, I think, go hand in hand, and allow for that to happen on a regular basis. Something you mentioned earlier that I kind of want to touch on, as far as promotions. So you looked at Psyop and you were like, hey man, promotions are great.
Yeah.
That's where I want to go already.
Yeah.
I'm going to get promoted. And you get here and it's like, you said 790 never, right?
790 never, yeah.
I experienced some of that, and I say some of that kind of happened early on as I was trying to make staff sergeant.
Yeah.
I guess I was the lucky guy. I was one of the last few that didn't really experience the heartache that some of you guys did. And there was this 3 or 4 year just, what the heck, man? And a lot of heartache. It's not the same. You mentioned a mass promotion. We had a mass promotion. There's been a lot of shift and change with how we're organized, and what that's done has opened up the potential for those promotions, both not only to staff sergeant but also to sergeant first class.
Yes.
What are your thoughts? How do you feel about that shift? Granted, it took a few years, but
yeah. Well, it's been a long time coming. I've been doing all these things as an E5, but it shows that somewhere somewhere up there, they're recognizing the capability of a lot of the regiment, you know, because enlisted make the bulk of the regiment, and they see that we're working way above our level, and I think they saw that, you know, it was long overdue. I felt like it was long overdue, and I'm appreciative for it. But, you know, as an E5, you know, in another country, having meetings with their Ministry of Defense, their top senior defense official, you know, I guess I didn't need the promotion to do it. I'm glad I'm getting paid for what I'm doing, right? But, you know, I don't know. I'm just, you know, thankful they did it.
Yeah, a lot of the speak from the senior officials was along those lines. You know, we've got these junior NCOs that are out having those high-level engagements affecting national strategy.
Yeah.
Let's make, you know, they need to be recognized in that aspect, and that's what came down to that change. So, you know, I think it was good that it happened. I wish it would have happened earlier.
Me too.
There are a lot of soldiers that I think are deserving of being at that level, and so it's good to see their progression, you know, from a senior perspective, because you want to see those soldiers with that potential grow.
There were a lot of E5s that I met along the way that were really intelligent and really capable physically as well, and we lost them because of the low promotion rate. I just kind of wish they would have stuck it out.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I will say, you know, for those that are still here, glad you're still around. You know, and for the guys that are coming into the MOS, the potential's there. You can learn and grow, and the promotion potential's definitely there. It's better now than I think it was when I was, you know, a junior NCO.
Yeah.
Because I did have some waiting. There was a joke for a while that, you know, you would wait for the kind of the roller coaster.
Yeah.
You know, it would peak, and there would be the 790 never, and that would go on for a year, maybe 2 years, and then it would dip way down.
And everybody's getting.
And then everybody was getting promoted for another.
Everybody gets a rocker. You get a rocker, like Oprah.
Right. And so I think we're at a point now where, you know, promotions are really, really good, and it's just reflective of, you know, the expectation from higher on us to perform at that higher level.
Yeah, one of the better things about getting, you know, said rocker is,
BAH.
BAH. I got told a lot. I got told a lot as an E5, like, you know, you got it. We trust you, but we just can't put you in charge of a team, because that's the one thing that holds it. Because it's not on us. It's on the ambassador. It's on, you know what I mean? It's on the
Right.
senior defense official. So in getting the rocker as a, you know, senior E6, I could be a team leader, and it could be myself in a country by myself, or, you know, with one or two other soldiers, affecting national policy with another country. So that really excites me, the ability to take on more responsibility, and the responsibility does increase. It's not, oh, I'm just going to get paid more to sit on my laurels. It's
Right.
there's an expectation that comes with it.
Yeah, once they see that you are able to perform at a high level, they're giving you that extra responsibility. They expect that same performance.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what's the Spider-Man quote?
Oh yeah, great power
Comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean,
It
yes.
applies here.
Yes, not to be confused with the only reward for hard work is more work.
Yes.
Not to be confused with it.
Yes.
It kind of happens a little bit, but the reward for it, I find more fulfilling.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. So you've spent several years on the conventional side. Now you've spent several years on the special operations side.
Yeah.
What to you kind of speaks to the differences? You know, what was it like there versus here? Good, bad, indifferent.
So, in the conventional side, there was more structures, more micromanagement, more more box. Things have to fit in a box. It has to look a certain way, and if the angle wasn't in the perfect spot, then it was not going to work. And what I found in special operations is probably more star-like, where the box could be turned a little bit, and that corner can maybe be a couple degrees, you know, east, and it will still fit. It'll still work, because you kind of get like an effect get told what success looks like, and maybe not so much how to achieve it. As long as it's, you know, morally correct,
Right.
you're given a little more leeway to accomplish the mission, which is more, that's more my speed, you know. Like I can't memorize anything verbatim. I can get the idea and I can get there, you know what I mean? That's probably why I won't ever be a drill sergeant, right? But and that just speaks volumes to me, and I think that's what allows me the opportunity for more success in the military, is being able to choose the path that I need to take to get to that finish line.
Yeah, that's I like your star analogy. You still have some rigid guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
but they're flexible in that you have the ability to move it and shape it.
Yeah.
But I think it's important, even still, given the star analogy, if you need to not follow that star, if you need to follow some other guidelines to
Yeah.
get to that, success, as long as you morally, ethically,
Yeah.
legally, we're staying within those bounds.
Right.
There's the
Multiple shapes. You can use a triangle. You can
Right.
use a circle, as
Right.
long as it'll fit within that. Yeah.
but it's something that you can, if need be, even step outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you stay within those moral, ethical, legal guidelines.
Yeah.
To get to yes, the opportunities to find a solution are endless, and that's really probably one of the most rewarding things about being in special operations and in SOF, is having that leeway to take something that you think is 10% of an idea, and it may even sound like a bad idea,
Right.
but you come together with your team and you say, hey, look, this is what I'm thinking. Let's common sense check this, and then let's see if can it actually work. What's
Yeah.
the feasibility? And then
That's what I like most about Psyop, because from working with the other tribes, if you will, under RSOF, there's more rigidity. Like, there's only so many ways you can train partner forces to do movement drills, right? There's only so many ways you can advise commanders on infrastructure, repair. But when it comes to influencing perception, there's so many ways
right,
that you can approach that. And when you work together with a team and nobody's stuck on this is what I want to do, and everybody's stuck on let's figure out how to go from A to B, the potential's nearly limitless.
right. I mean, you're touching on a point where the human factor is you're talking about the human mind. So with the human mind comes infinite number of issues, concerns, situations
Yeah.
that come up, and for us, we have to figure out how to navigate that to get them to do what we need them to do to support the mission that we're on.
The greatest thing is you can only look at it as if it were me so much, because you have to put yourself in their shoes. You have to be empathetic, right? You have to be like, you use the, okay, if it were me, I would like it this way. That only goes so far.
Right.
Maybe that's how to get your boss to say yeah, right? But after that, you got to be like, now how do I, if I were them, then how would I receive this kind of thing? And I like that a lot.
No, it's a good problem to. If you're a person that likes to solve unique problems, that's a good position to be in.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put it.
Yeah. And then there's straightforward. We have straightforward aspects, right? A lot of some of the things that we needed to do in Afghanistan were pretty straightforward. For instance, hurricane relief, when we're doing those kinds of things,
Right.
those are pretty straightforward. Trying to help advise, the people that were there to assist. Hey, maybe we should get out of this stagnant water because it carries disease, right? That's pretty straightforward. You don't have to get too creative on that, as long as you can understand how they receive a message, as in speak the language, the syntax is right, all that stuff. If being super creative is not your thing, or like me, I can't be creative on command, right? Sometimes I just need to sit there, on the throne or something and just have the light bulb come on. Those things work. Those things help.
No, and that's I think the pleasure of being in SOF.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily. There are opportunities where okay, I need an answer and I need something now, and maybe you revert to a cookie cutter solution that you've used in the past.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case, and we allow the freedom.
Freedom of maneuver, almost, right?
Maneuver, of thought, to engage from a variety of aspects, so that way you can still find a solution that works within the means available to you, and that's a nice place to be. So one of the things that we talk about a lot in Psyop are the skills that we bring to the table, regardless of the mission that we're on. I think one of the things that's beneficial, regardless of the background of the soldiers, is that background. For instance, I was a former infantryman. Some of those skills came into play on one of my deployments, working with a special forces detachment, and it was beneficial to the detachment. It was beneficial to the mission. So I'm curious, your background with transportation, the logistics side of things. Has that ever played into the things you do with Psyop? And has it helped, with anything that you've done experience-wise since you've been in Psyop?
Yeah, some of the time I spent in Afghanistan, I spent facilitating the delivery of stuff to some of the teams that were further in the outstations. Being a clutch burner, I was one of the few that could operate the manual vehicle that was being used to, haul some of the required products down out to be transported. So I guess I can attribute that to my motor vehicle operator experience.
It's actually surprising. I've got kids. You have kids yet?
No. Oh, I got one on the way.
On the way. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I've got one that's about to start driving, and so one of the stipulations is, you got to learn how to drive a standard.
Yeah.
You have to drive a stick shift.
Yeah.
It's a skill that's actually surprisingly rare these days, and so I could see, especially in a foreign environment, I think at every deployment I've been, whether it's been a combat style deployment, if I'm driving a non-tactical vehicle, as we call them, your standard truck or SUV or car,
Yeah.
it seems like the rest of the world still has stick shifts everywhere.
Yeah. You have to be like top tier. From my experience, you have to be top tier in society in some of these other countries to have an automatic, or approaching top tier. Both types of deployments I've been in, my regional deployments and my tactical deployment, I've been exposed to the non-tactical vehicle manual transmission, and being able to drive them helps me out. One of the things that I'm getting prepared for one of my missions, we do get some exposure to manual for those that have never experienced it, and one of the offensive, defensive, mobile force protection schools that we go to teach us to help us hone our move, shoot, communicate skills, which is some pretty cool training that I probably would never have gotten outside of special operations. But every country I've been in, there's been the requirement to drive manual, and now I own two. So I own two manuals. I own one that I call my Hodgemobile. It keeps me ready to drive probably the less than passable vehicles when it comes to inspection, and then I got my muscle car. It's not a real muscle car unless it's a manual.
I've heard that. I've got two manuals, but they're both two-wheeled.
Oh, so, nice. Yeah, that helps too. I'm trying to get the wife to get me one of those.
Let me know how that works out after your kid gets here, because that tends to...
I'm going to ask you for some advice.
It took me a few years to get my mind back.
Yeah.
I was married with one, and then the kid came along, and the bike went off into the wilderness, and it took about, I think, 10 years before it came back. So good luck with that.
Thanks.
So, any other interesting experiences that correlate to your previous experience on any of your time in PSYOP?
Uh, it was actually I did most of my learning in special operations. My time as a truck driver was a lot of pretty straightforward. I mean, like I learned about fuel because in Korea I worked as a fueler even though I was a truck driver. I also worked in the S1 while I was a truck driver. So I guess I can apply that now. So I understand like the human resource aspect and what I learned as an 88 Mike was to consider everybody else, you know, and a lot of times in working with some of the other special operations, you kind of see like we all sometimes get focused on the mission, and I learned to remember everybody else. You know, I remember that it takes the team to do something, and I bring that experience to the unit. You know what I mean? To the forces, to the Psyop regiment, and I think I share that with people, and I think people that work with me kind of notice that. At least I hope. And you know, I don't do it for recognition or anything. And I do it because I remember what it was like. You know, so.
No, absolutely. I think that, but also the variety of experiences that you had, and you may not realize this, but you know, with us, you know, engaging with foreign populations and trying to understand cultures and things that affect them, all of those things that you just mentioned are parts of foreign culture in some aspect.
Yeah.
You know, and having an understanding on fueling processes or what types of fuel a certain economy uses.
Yeah.
You know, because there are variety and differences from culture to culture.
Yeah.
You know, some places they only use diesel. Other places they use standard gasoline. Now, you know, you've got the world of electric vehicles. I know that's not necessarily a military problem right now, something that we focus on, but that's all stuff that could affect an environment that we're going to be in. Couple that with the, you know, having that empathy and understanding, and you know, remembering everybody else that's around you. That's I think a key asset that you bring to any team or mission that you're on, because you have that perspective, and I think that's what's really when you talk about special operations and PSYOP soldiers, especially the ones that I've seen and worked with. That other skill that they think, oh, I just left that behind. They really didn't.
Right.
They moved on. You know, I like to say it's, you know, their higher calling. They're coming on to have a higher impact within, you know, with our nation across the globe. But that skill, somehow, some way, has given them something, an insight into a foreign culture, population, a process.
Yeah, I think it's probably like the sugar in my Kool-Aid, where it's there. I just don't notice it because it's so mixed in. But as you bring that up, I kind of think like I have some kind of ability to like mingle in with the worker bees, you know what I mean? And that helps me navigate my way through working with, you know, partner nations. If it's, you know, breaking bread with Afghanis, you know, who I'm doing patrols with, or, you know, just taking a break and chit-chatting with, you know, partner nation, you know, junior enlisted, or even the junior officers of partner nation, and just having the common person conversation with them, and not necessarily, you know, uptight U.S. representative looking for output or looking for results right away. And I learned that, you know, being a fueler, you know, sitting there with the JP8 nozzle, the D1 nozzle, pumping JP8 into a rotating, you know, whatever, Apache or Chinook or whatever, while talking to a crew chief. I bring that with me, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think the important takeaway is those skills, you know, while they may not be ever present all the time, they're there, and it's kind of, you know, something that you bring with you on any mission set. You mentioned some other types of deployments aside from Afghanistan. I know we talked about your kind of 2-star experience.
Yeah.
Do you have any other unique experiences?
So I think I mentioned earlier something about meeting with the Ministry of Defense, which was pretty intense for me. That's the equivalent of going to the Pentagon and meeting the Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
But it was with a partner nation, so I respect that experience. I respect that moment. And I appreciate it. See some of the other things. It's kind of like you go and you partially negotiate on behalf of the U.S. government even when it comes to like spending the money. Like sometimes you have to work with national businesses in a foreign country to receive some type of product or some type of service. So you gotta help negotiate what you're looking for, identify what they're charging, and incorporate that into the contracting process. Like, and that's a great experience. It's an experience that I'm going to be able to take with me after I get out. Maybe apply it. Maybe when I retire, if 50, if I'm still willing to stay with it, I can then somehow work as a civilian and take all of these lessons that I'm learning and apply them to what I want to do next. And those are things like the embassy time, learning how the State Department works, and appreciating how hard they work, maybe not always liking their methods, but still understanding the purpose and the effort, and being able to interact with them. That's something I wouldn't have been able to learn,
It's a different environment. I kind of had some culture shock.
Yeah.
On my first trip. I went to the country of Dominican Republic.
Okay. Nice.
Horrible deployment.
I like the country. I've been there. I like the
I don't know
country.
if you pick up the sarcasm, but
Yeah.
it was really nice. The country is beautiful. They definitely have, there's a lot of interest there with State Department. It was a great time, but not knowing and understanding. It was kind of cool because we did some familiarization.
Yeah.
Later on, on later deployments, getting ready for engagements with Department of State, we started to send people up to the Foreign Service Institute.
Yeah.
To get integrated into some of their courses, understand their speak. It is different.
Very different.
People don't realize that Department of State and Department of Defense, while they have the same goals, you talk about national strategic, the strategy.
Yeah.
The way they say things and how they do things are different.
The killer is they speak in all acronyms sometimes too, right? But the acronyms are different, Yeah. And so they'll use the same mix of letters, and then we'll think it means one thing, but it means something else. And it's, whoa, you gotta catch in. You don't want to embarrass or get embarrassed by asking what it means, and they're like, well, silly, that means this. Like everybody knows this, duh. So you got to be able to build that relationship.
And it's, I don't know, it was one of the cool experiences that I never thought I would do in the Army.
Yeah.
Going from, a traditional uniform, doing soldier tasks, going to the range and ruck marches, and here I am putting on a suit and tie to go talk to an ambassador, or like in your case, a foreign minister of defense, to affect some component of national policy for the U.S.
Yeah, if I were a tiger, that was my taste of blood. Like, now that I had it, I don't ever want to lose it. That was it for me. And working with partner uniform personnel at the same time. So being able to go from one to the other in the same day, it was great.
Yeah, it's a good experience. It's a great experience for a young NCO. Again, for me, my first time, I was a junior staff sergeant. I'd had a few combat deployments, which combat is combat.
Yeah.
Even if you're a PSYOPer, your mission's a little bit different.
Yeah. Even if you're infantry and you're fortunate enough to go along on a KLE or something, it's similar but different, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah, I can't even describe how it's different. Well, for one, you might be, as an E5 or E6, you might be in charge of that key leader engagement.
Yeah.
Right. Where, as an infantryman, I would imagine, or as PSD, which I played a little bit of PSD.
A little security, right?
Yeah, personal security detail. You're just there, standing there rigid, at attention, trying to look intimidating.
Look around.
All right, and looking out for yourself and your battle buddy's life, right? But you got to do that and lead the engagement.
Yeah. And it's, you kind of, when you talk amongst the regiment, you have the guys that really like the tactical stuff. You have the guys that really like to go do the strategic stuff.
Yeah.
With Department of State, the other agencies.
Yeah.
That are out there, and you get a little back and forth. You know, pride. Oh, the mine's better. Yours is better. I've seen both. As of you, I think.
So which one are you?
I like both. I mean, I've had great experiences on both sides.
Okay.
My very first Psyop deployment is probably one of my top deployments, and it was a rotation to Afghanistan in combat.
Nice, yeah.
But as I mentioned, I went to the Dominican Republic. I've also been to Panama and a few other places, but they're unique and they're different. And for me, it's almost like your kids, trying to say which one's your favorite.
Yeah, right.
I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot of experience and appreciation for what we do. And I think for me personally, the understanding of what needs to happen at each level, that's what's important, and that's for me the takeaway, because seeing what Psyop does at a strategic level, through the embassies, through some of those higher level commands, versus what a PSYOPer can do on the ground tactically, and then seeing the connection, that's where I've gained the most appreciation. That's the thing that I like. So for me to say one is the favorite, it's really hard for me, because I've seen both sides and I've seen how they, how that line connects the two.
Yeah, and that's hard, being able to connect that line, and being able to zoom out, I guess. I said something about getting stuck in a bubble earlier. I mean, it happens, right? Combat focus, or tunnel vision, or whatever you want to call it. And I think the ability to do that will help anyone navigate through special operations. I think, though, I've had some good experiences tactically, but I think I excel regionally, probably more. I mean, like I said, I'm a little bit older. Billion-mile humping a ruck on the back, billion miles. My vision's not so good. I don't know how well I can shoot, but I mean, good enough to get it done, but not enough to snipe if that were ever required.
I'm not too far behind you, so don't get too far down on yourself. Getting old, I think it was the older the wiser.
Yeah.
I think it's true testament, especially with Psyop.
Yeah.
And that's where I've grown appreciation, seeing all of the things I've seen, and understanding how we play a role. You've seen it, right now. Information warfare is what it is, and that's a big piece of what we do. And having been able to see that from a variety of perspectives, I feel privileged, because when I'm with my team and with my detachment, I know how to engage with them to get to mission success. I know how to provide them with appropriate amount of mentorship, and so seeing the forefront of warfare and really what Psyop is doing, I've gained appreciation for all the things that I've had the opportunity to do.
All the little things. It's almost like Karate Kid. Oh, teach me karate. Okay, well, first, wax the car, paint the fence. And how is this going to teach me that karate? And they're all little stepping stones. And then once you get to that level, you see it all. And then you can see where other organizations within the Department of Defense are yearning for what we can do. Sometimes they just don't know how to ask for it. And sometimes it's our job to show up and say, here I am, and let me show you why this is what you wanted. You just didn't know how to say it. And start producing the results, and then they just keep asking.
Yep. No, I think it's a good time to be in Psyop.
Yeah.
Having seen the evolution. I've been in, I think you said you've been in Psyop 7 years?
Yeah,
8 years?
Since 2013, yeah.
I've been in 12 years.
Wow.
So been in the regiment a little bit longer.
You were literally a speaker monkey.
Yes. Yes. That was a thing.
Yeah.
I think it's still sort of a thing, but not so much.
Right.
But having seen the evolution, and even just looking back historically, looking at how over the years and the decades, even before, if you look back even early, the early Afghan-Iraq conflicts,
right,
how much it's changed since then.
It's changed a lot.
You take a tactical PSYOP guy in Afghanistan now versus 2001, 2002.
Wouldn't recognize each other.
Right.
Right.
And it's a testament to how, kind of beating my drum here on our ability to evolve through ambiguous environments and solve problems, and we find ways to get after it, and we evolve with the problem set.
And the great thing about special operations is how fast they can be with updating, modernizing activities and equipment, right? Like, I mean, when I was in Korea, I saw a lot of, in 2009, I saw equipment that looked like it'd been there since 1980, right? And I don't see that here, right? Like,
Right.
So that's one of the benefits. I feel like they're trying to take care of their their soldiers.
No, absolutely. So before we kind of cut this off, do you have anything that any advice, any comments that you want to throw out there to somebody who's curious about PSYOP? Just anything you feel you want to add before we end today's broadcast.
I mean, I feel like if you try out and for one reason or another you don't make it the first selection, don't let it be. It doesn't mean it's your last selection. I've seen it. I've seen an officer that was an enlisted PSYOP. That officer got commissioned, went back to selection, and didn't get selected. And they had already done the job. They had to return to selection as an officer to be accepted after that. So just don't let it discourage you. Some of that persistence, some of that motivation is some of the things that we want. Or at least I like to see in a team member, or maybe even a leader, somebody leading me. I like to see those things. Also, once you come over to the regiment and you see me in the ranks, don't be afraid to say hi.
Absolutely. Appreciate your time, CJ. Thanks for coming out.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Mike.
Join us next time on PSYWAR Profiles.